Purpose Highway is a space for discussions that drive connections toward people's highest purpose to build a better self and a better world. Join me for Season 1, where I start to uncover stories of entrepreneurs and thinkers that are making an impact. I'm your host, Scott Mason, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everybody. This is Scott Mason. Welcome to my podcast. It's good to have you today. I have as a guest Jason Holzer, calling in from the Midwest and here to talk to us about his book, his life, things like resilience, and his story that I think will really resonate with every listener. Jason, you have had a life that has been, to say the least, unusual. If there's any single thing that defined you as a person, making you who and what you are today, tell us about what that is.
Yeah, I think as a person, we're always trying to find meaning in life. We're always trying to find why am I here, and those kind of things. And I think for myself was that as I've gone through life and as I've experienced both the highs of highs and the lows of lows, I realized that, it's important to just learn who you are and learn what these situations in life are trying to teach you, whether they be extremely painful or extremely exciting, to kind of give you a guidance on purpose, perspective, and how to make the most out of the time that we're here on Earth.
Yeah, I really hear that purposefulness, connecting to who we are, making sure that we understand why we were placed on this planet and the impact that we could have. If there is a single area that you feel like you're driven to have the most impact in, what is that area?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been mentality, mindfulness, understanding how your mind works. Because Steve, whenever I was 17, as you know, we talked about, I lost my dad to suicide, and that was an extremely painful moment in my life because it altered my life forever. Like one day my dad was here, the next day he wasn't, and my family was a close-knit family. My parents were together. There was no dysfunctionality. We were tight-knit, like I said, and what hurt the most was I didn't know he was struggling with something because I didn't have the awareness to look out for the signs of, something that somebody goes through whenever they're contemplating suicide. There's red flags that people talk about, and as a 17-year-old, I just wasn't aware of it. And so I look back and think, man, what could I have done? But now that I know the signs, I feel like kind of my purpose is to help people lessen the effects of suicide and get ahead of it before somebody else loses somebody, a loved one, to suicide as well.
That is profoundly impactful. I think that the happening of a suicide in a family, if not one of the most dramatic, disturbing, and life-changing things that can happen to someone, has to be right up there in the very, very top percentages of things that can happen to someone that's traumatic. You mentioned that it happened when you were around 17. One thing I think that the audience might be interested in hearing is your story around that. Like, what exactly was it? Literally, like one day you came home and out of the blue, your dad was gone. What is the story behind all of this, and what was it like for you experiencing that?
Sure. It was May 8th, 2003. So, it's almost summertime. I'm getting ready to finish my junior year of high school, getting ready to go to my senior year, which for a lot of people, that's a really exciting time. It's like, you're going into that summer before you kind of know what high school is going to be like, but you have built this great group of friends, typically for the most part. And I just remember the night before he passed, like he was sleeping on the couch, fell asleep watching TV and thinking, oh man, you know what? I'll see Dad tomorrow. because I had to study for a algebra 2 trig test because it was end of the year, kind of like the last test before finals. And then I woke up the next morning and I went to school. And as I was taking that trig test I was studying for, I actually got caught out of class. And I was like, I don't have any appointments, or my mom didn't tell me that I'm going to be pulled out. It was totally unexpected. And then when I walked up to the front office, my aunt and uncle were there. One of my aunt and uncles were there. And they told me that my dad had been in an accident and that they were going to take me to the hospital. And I was like, okay. Which was, not out of the realm because he was an electrician. He was a blue collar worker. So something like that could have happened. But okay, no big deal. So I was trying to think positive in my head. Okay, so he's just a little bit injured. We'll be fine. He's still here. But then whenever we left school, we went the opposite direction of the hospital. We actually went to my house. We're going the direction of my house. And I was like, I thought we were going to the hospital. But at that moment, I felt too nervous, tense to really ask, like, why are we going home? I remember me and my sister just sitting across from each other, just quiet, like just didn't know what to think. And that was like my first time of really having an intuitive feeling like, oh, he's gone. Like my dad passed away. So in my head, I was thinking, he's okay, he's okay. But in my heart, I was like,
wow,
I lost my dad. And I didn't know how. I didn't know, how it happened again. But I just had a feeling. And my feeling was, unfortunately, spot on.
What had your relationship with your dad been like before that? Were you close to him? Was it like, oh, I'm a teenager now, Dad, go to the side? Were you hostile to him? I had a lot of fights and stuff with my dad when I was a teenager. Was it in between? Was he a strong figure in your family? Was he sort of in the background? Talk to us a little bit about what it was like for you between the two of you before this happened. So maybe we could get a stronger sense as to what it was like for you when this change happened.
Yeah. I mean, my dad he was a man of great humor. He was an extrovert, very involved. Like he was my first coach growing up with baseball and basketball. We would play out in the driveway, pitch and catch. I mean, like he was everything that you could ask for in a dad in so many ways. He taught me the right work ethic. He, pushed me out of my comfort zone a lot of ways. Like, hey, son, we got to go. We got to get this done today. Work before play, and then we'll have a lot of fun. So I have great memories of my dad as a child. He took me to like baseball games as a kid, which, that was going to St. Louis from where I grew up in Jeff City. That was 2.5 hours there and back. So that was a commitment on their part. They even took me out of school one time to go to a playoff game. So I was like, I look back at my childhood and I think, wow, they did so much for us. Like we went on road trips. We went to like Nashville, Minneapolis. I mean, we didn't go far, but they took us and they did fun things with us. Boy Scouts together. He helped me build a Pinewood Derby car. So he was a huge figure in my life. And I found new ways to keep him in my life, even though he's not physically here, and trying to overlook how it ended and remember the good things that he did teach me while he was here and kind of leave his legacy in that aspect as opposed to, losing him to suicide.
Yeah. And I'm sure folks in the audience are wondering, if there is someone in my life who who appears to be happy, appears to be stable, who I have a great relationship with, is it possible that I will come home one day or get a phone call and find out suddenly they're gone? And as I'm sure you've been asked before, folks might ask themselves, well, how would I know? What can I do? Or is it one of those things that you learn through this that you just accept it happened? Did you have signs yourself looking back on it that you might have said to yourself, not that you necessarily could have done anything about it, but where you might have said, at least I had some idea that this might have happened? What do you say to someone in the audience that might be asking these sorts of questions?
Yeah, I think for myself, and I didn't know. And I think it's like you look for any maybe radical changes in behavior or things that just seem out of normal, things that just don't make any sense, or maybe it's like they're not eating like they used to, or maybe they're not sleeping like they used to, or and this is happening like days in a row. So not that it happened like every once in a while you're going to have certain days where you're just kind of off, but if you have like repeated days that are almost like there's a negative like looping pattern going on. I think as I look back myself, 5 days before he passed, or 4 days before he passed, we had my youngest sister's first communion. She's 9 years younger than me, so she was only 8 at the time. If you look at our family picture, I mean, he was smiling, like we were like just you would have never have guessed what was going on in his head.
Right.
I think that's what makes it so tough is like you never really know what somebody's thinking. And so, for me, again, from my 17-year-old perspective, I just didn't have the awareness or the, I didn't have the any thought in my mind that this would be happening to me because, our family's been healthy.
Yeah.
And that's not something that's happened in our past either. It wasn't like it was like, oh, we have a history of it in our family.
Right.
So it wasn't even that there. We had any reason to believe that something like that would happen.
Your mom, how was your relationship with her impacted? How did this affect the overall family dynamic? How does a family recover from something like this?
Yeah. My mom, she was a stay-at-home mom, so she had to go back to work too. And then I was a year away from college as well. So she had dealt with a lot in a year's time because I wanted to go and get a fresh start somewhere. I didn't want to be in the same town. I wanted to explore. So I went to Missouri State University, which was only 2.5 hours away.
Right.
But I think she would have at the time liked it if I would have stayed closer to home to help out and with things. But I think she told me that day, she's like, the best thing you did was go to college because you stuck to the decision. You did what you felt was right, even only being a year removed. I figured things out. I worked through it. And so resiliency is what I really learned from my mom, and we had our ups and downs, like every family does, but we continue to work through them and stay together. Like we continue to, still celebrate birthdays and Christmas and holidays. And even though they were tough and even though they were emotional, we believe that that was the best way to find our new normal, even when it didn't feel right or it felt like something was missing the entire time. And quite frankly, it still does, Scott. It's not like you just quote unquote get over it. You just learn to accept what it is and try to make the best of the moments. And even I feel like it's helped me become more present with the people I'm around too, because of that loss, because I realized that life is short, and because I realized any moment could be the last time you see, the person that you just interacted with.
It's interesting that you say that. I was here in New York City on 9/11, and it was not the exact same situation, obviously. And fortunately, I didn't lose anyone that close to me. But I'll never forget going on the subway that morning to work and actually relaxing. It was such a beautiful day, reading the newspaper. It was going the subway was going a little bit slow, as it can do sometimes. And just saying, well, I've left for work a little early today, so I have time to, just chill out. It doesn't matter if it's running slow. I'm going to read the newspaper, only to come out and experience what happened next. After that occurred, one of the things that I became very obsessed with was the fate of the people that were caught in the floors above which there was really no escape. And I remember seeing pictures of people that were hanging from windows. They had literally crawled out apparently to escape the heat and were, more than 100 stories up, hanging by their elbows, desperate for life, but at the same time knowing it was about to end. And then I became obsessed with some of the other ways that people's lives ended that day. I think it was my way of processing it, trying to wrap my mind around the impossible. And one of the things that hit me the hardest and that I've never really been able to escape was that exactly what you're saying. Every single one of those people probably had someone that loved them, that they were someone's mother or their father or their sister or their brother or aunt or uncle or best friend. Every one of us went to work that day thinking it was going to be another day. Every one of those people never came back home again. And so learning to appreciate that, being present in it, constantly trying to be mindful of it is one of the quote unquote positives that can come out of a situation like this. One of the things that you mentioned earlier was resilience. You know, going to college, I'm sure, was, from your mother's perspective at the time, a sacrifice. And maybe it was a sacrifice for you, but you still, as she mentioned, stuck with it. You did what you needed to do. You began to go down a particular path in your life. Talk to me a little bit about how your life path then, what your goals and objectives have been, might have been impacted by the obstacles that you overcame during that process. And if you have any advice for us about how you can be resilient in the face of something like this. I don't even know, if this were to happen to me, how I could begin. I might not be able to even see beyond the next minute, let alone the next hour, the next day. Where do you start?
Yeah, I think that's like kind of, you mentioned it, like that's kind of how you start, is like, I just got to get through these next 10 minutes, or then you kind of build up, like, okay, if I can just get through this next hour, through this next day. And at time is something that can heal, but you have to give yourself the time to allow yourself to do that. And so it really was moment by moment, for a while, especially immediately afterwards, because we had the services, the ceremonies, the visitations, all that kind of thing. We had people coming to send their condolences, and it was kind of a whirlwind of everything as I remember it. So especially, for my mom, who was the adult, and we had a very supportive family too, which was really helped out around us. But, like you said, it was, days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. And then, eventually you're like, well, man, I still have to move forward. I still have to figure out, what do I want to, what am I here to do with my life? Because it's not like you can just stop. It's not like you just, okay, well, I'll just hang out here and then everything will just kind of work itself out. Like, you still have to figure out, how do I move forward in this situation? And that's part of my subtitle of my book, is like, how to move forward after feeling left behind. And I go back to, my intuition, my gut, but how I'm feeling about places I should go. And that's why I knew I should go to Missouri State, because I took a tour there. And my gut was telling me, I walked on campus. I was there maybe 3 minutes, and I was like, this is where you need to go. Mm. I didn't know why. I was like, it just felt right. And I was like, okay. So, and I didn't apply to the school. I was just, boom. I didn't have to, because I knew, like, I'm not going to waste my time, because I ended up meeting my wife there. I ended up meeting, lifelong friends there. I ended up, spending so many of my great years, and it kind of gave me a chance to discover who I was without my dad's suicide hanging over my head, staying at home, being immersed with, what my family think I should be doing, what, other people in the community think I should be doing. I got to kind of go and figure it out on my own, which is what I kind of felt like I needed to do.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of folks in the audience are going to be wondering the exact question that I'm about to ask you. And that is, did you ever find out exactly what motivated his passing?
Not directly, or not. There was no note. There was no plan. There was no any kind of inclination. And my family, my mom, myself, like, we've dug through everything. Like, we were trying to search for anything, any inclination. My mom did say that, he was in a stressful situation with his job, where, blueprints from the state that he was working on a state project, weren't matching up with how things were supposed to be working out as he was hands-on working on it as a foreman, as a supervisor. And so I think the stress of meeting deadlines from a state government, state project, and things not matching up, and him trying to, because he was a quality worker, he believed in doing things the right way. He believed in doing things, and if things were matching up, he wasn't just going to skip steps just to get it done. He wanted to make sure it was done correctly. So I think, that was part of the unfortunateness too, was things weren't matching up, and it was overtaking his head, because it was like one of the first times where he couldn't really figure it out, because he was great with his hands. He was a true craftsman.
Right.
So that's kind of like I think what happened, but again, that's just really kind of speculating.
But that goes us to another challenge that some people might face in their lives, particularly difficult times. For instance, one thing about 9/11 that is really distinct from what happened to you, and there are a lot of things that are distinct about it, but in terms of the traumatic impact, I would imagine, for the people who survived it, was that ultimately we were able to, as a country, figure out a narrative explaining what happened. And so the mystery behind it at least provides, if not closure, some sort of story that we could get behind, or an explanation. In your case, though, I'm hearing that there will always be an aura of mystery around what happened. And so not being able to wrap one's arms around a narrative, I could only imagine, adds to the challenge. How over time did you learn to deal with that lack of knowledge without even an explanation that's clear?
Yeah. Initially it was like just suppressed it and then act external, like you're fine, everything is good. But I realized that doesn't work, because any emotion suppressed will eventually get expressed. And so for me, my expression came out in my dreams as I was sleeping. I talk about this in my book as well. I would have very angry dreams, and they would feel very real. Like I would wake up and I would have to check, like, okay, that wasn't real, right? Like he was still alive again, but it was in, the bad dad situations, like, the yo-yo dad, or only comes around when you need something, or he's gone and he's kind of like coming back in, and so I realized, like, okay, like this is not sustainable, because unconsciously I feel like there are still some things that I need to work through. So I went down a path of forgiveness, and I learned about forgiveness. I learned about what it was, and I was like, okay. And then I learned that forgiveness is something that you do for yourself. It's not necessarily for the other person that maybe you felt wronged by, or you felt put you in a bad position. And what that did was it helped me see maybe his perspective. And so I thought, like, I wonder what he was going through. I wonder what was happening. And then it made me almost empathize with him in a way. Like, like I don't know how I would respond in that situation. I hope I wouldn't obviously do the same thing, but like, okay, like, and I realized it, like, and then whenever you hear people, a lot of times when people die by suicide, it was because they felt like people were better off if they weren't here. Like they get that thought in their mind, and then they start believing it, and they start getting emotionally involved in it. And so I was like, man, I hope he didn't feel that way, but if he did, like, Dad, I'm sorry, like that, you might have felt that way. So I think, continually like working on forgiving the incident and detaching it from who he was before that, I think has really helped me kind of accept it and find a way to like step ahead and move forward. And how can I maybe, make other people more informed, or even heal, like suicide loss survivors, help them heal, help them gain some perspective too.
And, all of this goes as to one of the things that is the most striking about you. As we prepared for this podcast, as we first began to get to know each other, and I'm sure as people are sensing when they listen to or watch this episode, you're someone who genuinely has chosen a path that is other-centered, that is service-centered. Talk to me a little bit about how choosing that path for yourself may or may not have helped you come to any sort of resolution around this process. And then talk to us a little bit about what you're doing now, because and to the extent that that all ties in, I think folks would love to hear about it, as well as just, finding out more about you.
Sure. Yeah. I think for me, when I'm feeling the best about myself is when I'm not only helping myself, but I'm also helping others at the same time. The project I'm in, I'm a teacher, when I see myself enjoying the moments, I'm having fun or I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It may be tough, but I also see the end results of people being beneficial because of the work that I'm doing. And I think whenever you get to that kind of a space, and whenever it's not like I'm just doing this for a paycheck, or I'm just doing this because I'm supposed to do it, but whenever you truly are able to see and think about, man, this is going to make my world or the world around me a better place, and people are going to be excited that I did that because they're going to benefit from it as well. And I call those win-win relationships. I call those, something where, not only do I win, but you win as well. And then therefore we win. And so the more I've walked in that mentality, Scott, I've met people like you, because I helped out our mutual friend, Roy. Like we connected, yeah. We got, we felt like there was a good connection between us. And, I put some people in front of him that I felt like would help him, and he did likewise. And, so he's been like, a true friend of mine that was a complete stranger 3 months ago.
Amazing. Amazing.
Which is whenever you get down that mindset, you are instantly connected with people that are like-minded, and building authentic relationships is easier because you understand, like, oh, well, there's a reason why he wanted me to get to know this person.
Yeah.
So it kind of opens up the door before you even meet somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on the topic of meeting people and helping people out and being service-oriented, you are doing a lot. Talk to us a little bit about 4D. Talk to us a little bit about your book. Let us know what you're doing, what your plans are, and especially how people can reach you and find out more about you and what you're doing in your story.
Yeah. I like to do things that resonate with me. And whenever I was a kid, I loved to play sports. I love to watch them. I love to go to them. I love to play them. And so I've taken what I love to do whenever I was younger, and then also my most painful moment, losing my dad to suicide. And me and a colleague of mine, good friend of mine, are building out this business called 4D Athletes, like the letter D Athletes. And it's 4-dimensional is basically what we want. Like, we want people to be balanced in mind, spirituality, physicality, and in your environment. And we are using sports as a vehicle to do that. So it's basically teaching essential life skills through sports. And our goal is to kind of market towards helping like the teenagers, young adults. And so we're changing a generation. So whenever they become adults, they have the skills they need to succeed. And it was through them being involved in the sport. And with my book, it's been out for almost a year now.
Congratulations.
24th will be 1 year. Yeah, that I released it. And, I'm also in that time made the bestsellers list as well. And my book is simply just about my story from a firsthand perspective, what a 17-year-old boy would go through losing his father to suicide, everything I felt, everything that, I went through. And then it was like, how did the things that I did to push forward, to move forward, and then eventually thrive forward. And the first thing I did was I learned how do I love myself so I can love others, kind of like taking care, like self-care. And a lot of us think self-care is selfish, when in reality self-care is essential.
Yeah.
Like taking care of your mind, your body, your spirit, your soul, your environment helps you take care of your family, your friends, and all those people that care about you. So I think we need to understand debunkify the myth that self-care is selfish. Self-care is actually selfless, because then you can show up as the best version for the people that you care about the most.
So where can people find out more about you on the web?
Yeah. LinkedIn is where I'm most active, but I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. A lot of the social media websites. And just reach out to me. I try to respond in 12 to 40 or 24 to 48 hours. I'm a teacher in the afternoon, so being in front of a screen is not always easy for me to respond. But I try to really respond to people that reach out to me, and because I believe in authenticity. I believe in, hey, if you took the time to reach out to me, I really appreciate that, and I'm going to take the time to respond and take the time to get to know you as well.
Well, I will assure you of this. Absolutely no one listening to this podcast will deny that you are authentic. It has been a pleasure talking to you, Jason. Hope to continue to be in touch. And everyone who's listening, thank you. This is Scott Mason. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Join our community today at purposehighway.com and subscribe to get notified when new episodes go live. Scott Mason, checking out.